morning, everyone. Appreciate you coming in. Thought it would be a good idea. There have been a lot of issues that have come up over the past few weeks to address some of those issues, as well as open up some other ones that perhaps you might be interested in. First of all, we're getting very close to the enforcement deadline for Real ID. As many of you know, we sent a letter as the House Republican leadership team to PennDOT asking that they start to be a little more proactive and do a little bit more in terms of making the appointments accessible. There are a lot of long lines, a lot of folks trying to get in and get this Real ID. And while we understand that the deadline has been out there for a while, we also understand that this was a government mandate. The deadline has been changed multiple times. And it is something that I think we need to be a little more accommodating for the folks who are trying to get this Real ID taken care of. We would have liked to have seen some more proactive steps, perhaps extending hours, providing some more flexibility in terms of when these places have been open. A little disappointed that it seems to be coming back to blaming Pennsylvanians when, again, this was a government mandate and a deadline that's been moved certainly plenty of times. Another issue concerns what happened at the governor's mansion, the arson and what took place from that, and we're all certainly very happy and relieved, and I speak for not just all of my constituents, but I know Pennsylvanians around this Commonwealth, certainly grateful that the governor and his family are okay. But at the end of the day, we're also hearing a lot of questions. It was probably the number one question I got when I went home that week with my constituents is, how did this happen? We, and when I say we, myself, as well as some of the chairmen of the committees that would have oversight in this jurisdiction, have been asking the same question. We would like to see a copy of the report, the Miller report. Former State Commissioner, State Police Commissioner Jeff Miller will be providing a report. We're happy that this is being done, but in the interest of transparency and accountability, we believe that legislative leaders should see this. Look, understanding that parts of the governor's protection plan cannot be in the public. We fully understand that and understand why. However, in terms of the accountability of what happened and how it happened, I think that is a question that needs to be answered, and that those answers need to be provided to the people's representatives here in the House and the Senate. So while we have not received an official response, so far the public response has been a little less than what we had hoped for in terms of providing that accountability, and we will continue to work with the administration hopefully on this issue so that we can provide answers. We do have the Government Oversight Committee in the House that could be a place where some of these questions could be answered, but we think at the very least this report needs to be given to us so that we can find out exactly what transpired and how that was able to happen, and to make sure that it can never happen again. Also recently, I dropped a co-sponsor memo concerning the privatization of some elements of SEPTA. We know that the mass transit system in the Southeast has been topic of many articles, and understanding the critical nature of providing mass transit to our major cities in Pennsylvania, we have to look for long-term sustainable solutions. I'm not sure how this is going to be resolved this year, but I know that in the past there's been asks, a certain amount of money to try and fill the hole. But at some point, the reality is that we will not be able to continue to do this. $165 million this year, potentially more in a couple years, more 2 years after that. There will come a day when that will not be realistic. And so what happens on that day? I've already said that we know that mass transit is critical to the economic development of Philadelphia and the greater Philadelphia region. So it has to be sustainable long-term, and we need long-term solutions that actually match the reality of what our fiscal situation could be in the Commonwealth for years to come. There's a lot of things that I hope for or would want to see, but at the end of the day, we have to deal in reality. As I say to my kids all the time, I wish pizza was a health food. I have to live in a world where pizza is not a health food, as bad as I want it to be. And we have to live in a world that over the next few years, the economic situation in this Commonwealth could be such that we cannot continue to support SEPTA in this way. And when that happens, what are our other alternatives? And so we believe that this was an alternative to put forth, in addition to what SEPTA has done, and I credit the current leadership for recognizing there is a problem and there does need to be some changes and some reformations of the system. But in addition to dollars, and there will always be public support if there's a public element of SEPTA, but we also have to have some other solutions that we're looking at. And then finally, as we approach this budget season, we still need to talk about energy development, energy generation, not just for the economic growth that it will provide and must provide to this Commonwealth moving forward, but also what it can do to strengthen our grid. And we know that power is going to be in short supply if we don't do something soon. These are not overnight fixes. We need to start that process now, from the trades to businesses around the Commonwealth to legislators. We know that we have to get out from under the specter of RGGI and anything that looks or smells like the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, so that we can bring stability to this market. We have to understand, if we just simply continued on without increasing our budget 1 penny, in a few years it's simply unsustainable at our current rate of economic growth. We have to generate economic growth in this Commonwealth. And as we look at this next budget, in the House Republican caucus, we believe it must be about more than just the numbers on the page. It has to be about how we're going to grow this economy so that we can flip the script on what we're seeing in the narrative that is being currently written, and we can have the tax base to support the programs that we feel are vital here in Pennsylvania. So those are some of the topics that I know have received some eyeballs over the last few weeks, and thought that this would be a good time to make myself available if you had any questions. Yep, go ahead.
Forgive me if I missed something. I was a little early showing up. You were talking about mass transit and SEPTA. Just in the last 48 hours or so, the Democrats have introduced a co-sponsor memos both in the House and Senate having to do with a transit for all plan with various license fee increases and other things. Have you seen that? What's your response to that?
Haven't seen it specifically yet. I would assume that something would have been coming from all parties involved in terms of how to fix this issue. I think there are certain systematic changes that have to take place. I credit SEPTA for recognizing that perhaps the fares need to be increased. If there are other proposals that are looking at reformations of that system, we'll certainly take a look at them because they're necessary. It just cannot simply be we're in another fiscal crisis, we need X amount of dollars.
PRT at all? Do you lump them in the same pond with something?
Well, I think where they're in the same conversation is whether it's Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or any of our major cities. Quite frankly, any major city around the nation needs transit and needs a sustainable system. So whatever we need to do to help make those systems sustainable, that's what we need to look at. And a lot of that revolves around the policy of the systems, whether it's Pittsburgh, whether it's Philadelphia, or any of the greater Allegheny County or Philadelphia regions. We need to ensure that they're doing everything they can to be sustainable, and that we're encouraging new and innovative ways to make that happen, because the same old is clearly not working.
What are you thinking about doing on energy? Like, do you have a leading idea on how to spur that sort of thing?
The number one thing to bring stability to the market is to get out of RGGI, which the governor can do with a swipe of a pen, and not replace it with anything, and say this is now the market. You do not have to worry about this carbon tax in Pennsylvania. And then I think the next step is to look at some of our regulations. We have seen what can happen when regulations are waived or spurred ahead. We look at our competing states like West Virginia and Ohio. In West Virginia, they'll take you from permit to shovel ready to the end of the project and actually help you through the process, as opposed to coming up with ways to slow the permitting down, increase that regulatory burden. We need to match, I think, what they're doing in West Virginia and Ohio. We have this is not Texas and Oklahoma. These are neighboring competitive states. So the first thing we have to do is get rid of the idea that there's going to be a carbon tax hanging over generators here in Pennsylvania. And then the next thing is to look at what they're doing in Ohio and West Virginia on the regulatory side, and make sure we're doing that here. Because we can compete with what we have.
Actual power plant construction, making sure that the permitting is sped up, is smoother.
We need generation, and we need the ability to transport the product. Pipeline development is essential.
Are there
Shapiro touts that he's been speeding up the red tape process. Are you saying when it comes to energy that's not happening?
I think if we're able to do it in certain scenarios, in certain areas, we need to be able to do it all over Pennsylvania, as opposed to allowing the administration to just speed up or slow up when they wish. It needs to be part of our overall ecosystem of how we do regulation.
You're saying that's not happening in the energy sector?
I think it's happening selectively at times, and I'm saying it needs to be across the board.
When you say pipeline development, are we talking about like gas pipelines to new gas power plants in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Have you heard about any retired coal-fired power plants coming back online?
Well, when you're talking about the data centers that want to come here, as you can see with 3 Mile Island, they're looking for any option to do it themselves, but there's only so many, it's limited out there of what can be done. I do think that needs to be part of the discussion, though. If the infrastructure is already in place, it would certainly be better to bring some of them back online.
The president has certainly tried to make that possible by relaxing environmental regulations.
I mean, they're digging coal out of the ground in Germany. It's not exactly like anybody else isn't seeing what needs to be done as well.
When it comes to the arson attack, what information do you want? You want the full report, or, you know, I know as a member of the media, I've asked that, you know, without getting, I'm not asking for specific security things you're going to do, or whether, but in general, what happened and how did it happen?
Yeah, I think the specifics and the transparency around what happened is what we need to see. Understanding that moving forward, if there are certain new protections that are in place, yes, those should be kept close to the vest. I understand that. I think everybody understands that. But I do think the accountability of what happened and why it happened, the failures of the system, we do need some accountability for that, and transparency is the best way to provide that.
When the candidate Trump, now President Trump, was shot in Butler, one of the big issues was that law enforcement was not communicating with one another. As we're finding in some reporting, people were calling 911 in Dauphin County, and they didn't even know what transpired hours earlier at the state police. There was a breakdown in communications pretty clear. Is that a message for other communities and other areas? That's something that you're interested in?
Look, communication among our emergency services and law enforcement community, whether it's at the national level, whether it's at the local level, or certainly if it's at the state level, should be one of our priorities. But we have to first see where the breakdowns exactly were. We have a security expert in former State Police Commissioner Miller, who is going to be conducting a review. I would imagine that his expertise in the field will provide a thorough report. I believe we need to see exactly what went wrong and what we can do better in the future. One of the reasons why we asked for accountability and transparency, whether it was what happened in Butler or whether it's what happened down the street, is that we need to make sure these things don't happen again, as to the best of our ability. Look, nothing will stop people who, quite frankly, have severe issues, or else they're just pure evil people out there that want to do harm. That's the reality. So we need to ensure that the protection of our elected officials and quite frankly, our communities, for anybody, is the best that it can be. And I think the best way we can do that is to look for the mistakes that have been made so we can be sure they don't happen again.
Well, Jeff Miller is certainly qualified to do it. He's got an impeccable resume. Are you concerned that a former police commissioner is now going to be the guy looking over the shoulder of the state police?
I'll be honest, I think his connection can help and hurt. It can help in the fact that he will have an idea and a basis of what is already going on. Sure, there will be those who will question how independent something can be when it is a former state police commissioner, but my answer is, let's see the report and we'll determine what it says. His ability to view it as an expert, I don't have a problem with.
Have you received any assurances that you're going to get a copy of the report?
No. In fact, so far the sentiment has been the opposite.
Can you describe?
Just what we've heard in the public. The public response that was given was the administration doesn't believe that this is something that would be necessary. We've not received anything official directly to us yet.
Have you asked directly to the governor's office or the Pennsylvania State Police for a copy of it when it's done?
Yes.
And has there been a response directly to you?
No.
Can you talk a little bit about what the public should know about this report and how that relates to what you should know on your level?
If there is concern that there are elements of the report that shouldn't be made public, we have legislative ways that we can do it. We can introduce even some legislation that would assure that that would be the case. But I think when it comes to the accountability of what took place and how it happened, that is something that the public should be aware of. And quite frankly, it's one of the top questions I'm getting from the constituents that I represent, which tells me that they have a concern and they do want to know.
Budget is due 2 months from today. We're gonna make a June 30th deadline, all that's been fungible the last couple of years, but
Dennis, I'm out of that prediction business. I've been here when people have said that we're going to be done early and we're late. I've been here when they said, oh, it's going to be in the fall and we get done on time early. These next 2 months will tell the tale as they always do. Conversations are always flying around in this building, starting with the governor presenting his proposal back in February. Whether this gets done or not, and whether it gets done in a timely fashion or not, will depend on all parties understanding, what's at stake. What's at stake in terms of the future of our economy. We understand that the current way we're doing things is unsustainable. The idea that we're going to continue to spend at the rate that we are without any public policy changes that will initiate economic growth, that's simply saddling future legislators with unenviable options.
What's your read on the landscape of legalizing marijuana and taxing custodians?
I think both have a long way to go before they're completed.
How do you feel about how much time we're spending in the Capitol, both on the Senate side and the House, for May and June?
Conversations, this isn't 1864. Conversations are taking place with members and legislators, whether it's via phone in the building. Those conversations are taking place. I'm not that concerned with building time, and quite frankly, I don't think our constituents are either. They want to see a work product. And to answer the question, the time frame is when the parties decide to come together and get serious about reaching a deal.
On these data centers, there's proposals all over the state to create these things, huge warehouses full of servers. Well, there's even one at a golf course near Dolphin Highlands Golf Course. I've read that people live near them find them loud. They use a lot of water. And Gene Yaw recently, twice, has expressed concern that they're going to be using juice that could go to the public, and he's worried about brownouts in a couple of years. Are all these, including the experience of people who live near these things, on your radar screen?
Sure, and I concur with Senator Yaw that if we do not do something to increase our generating capacity in Pennsylvania, with or without the data centers, in a few years we will be experiencing brownouts or blackouts. There will be, there'll be switches that'll be flipped and lights aren't going to come on. And when that happens, we will find the full brunt of Pennsylvanians' anger, and rightfully so, which is why we need to start the process now. And again, if we do want to continue to attract data centers, and there probably is a limit of how many should be going around and where they should be, but at the end of the day, we know it's AI and that generation is a huge part of the new economy. We need them here. Then we need to make sure that the grid can support it.
Do you think data centers should be or can be a good source of economic growth in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Any budget negotiation sticking points you think the media is not covering that we should look into?
Well, I don't think there's any sticking points as of yet. I think there's still plenty of ideas. We made it clear that energy, and I think when I say we, I mean the Republican legislature has made it clear that energy is a priority, but also some kind of a plan for how the economy is going to grow moving forward. As I said before, if we just simply flat funded the budget and move forward, in a couple years, we're dipping into a rainy day fund, surplus is gone, and you're going to start seeing some difficult decisions having to be made. If you want to increase spending even $1, which as we know, the administration and I think the other side of the aisle wants to increase it a lot more than that, then there has to be a way to pay for it.
When it comes to privatizing transit, do you guys have any estimates on how that would impact fares for people? How do you think it would impact service?
We're just getting started with the concept. I think it would be different in every way, that depending on what private company would want to come in and help with that. We have heard from a few I don't want to speak, to the specifics of those because they're still just trying to get an idea of what that would look like. But I think what it would bring is stability. I'm not sure of the price structure, but it would mean that you would have an operation that even in lean economic times for the state would still be able to operate. And that's really what the greater Philadelphia region needs, is they need stability, knowing that if we do run into a couple budget cycles where we can't afford to put a lot of money in, that system can still function. So however we can do that, I'm open to suggestions.
And then thoughts on some of the other proposals to raise taxes on rentals, some of these other, trying to create new revenue sources to link to transit?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of creating new revenue specifically to designate to one problem. I know it's something that we've done in the past, but again, the stability of that can be in question. And that would, if the economy turns, all of those areas will hurt. And so that money won't be generated.
So, privatization plan, is that an alternative to Shapiro's plan, or is that possibly, we could do Shapiro's plan, but you want the privatization included?
I think it could be a mix. Look, there will be state dollars that will flow to mass transit, as with any part of our transportation infrastructure here in Pennsylvania. That's part of it. So I'm looking at this as part of the solution. It's not the whole solution. I understand that. So we're certainly willing to take any of these ideas and make them part of an overall solution. Keep in mind, we're talking about one aspect of our transportation system and needs in Pennsylvania. One of the difficult things when the governor flexed those dollars, those federal dollars, what it did was it stopped projects in districts like mine. Roads and bridges that need fixed in other parts of the state all of a sudden didn't have that money. I don't think we want to start doing that. I don't think we want to damage the overall transportation model or infrastructure model in Pennsylvania specifically to try and fix one problem, because there are other problems.
Yesterday was President Trump's 100th day in office. From your perspective, what has that first 100 days meant to Pennsylvania?
It's meant that we've had to answer a lot of questions about his first 100 days in office, but at the end of the day, the issues that we're finding in Pennsylvania are the ones that we would have found regardless of who the president is in terms of our economic growth. I am hopeful that some of his policies, particularly on the energy side, are going to help spur us to make some changes and do the same thing, because I think one of the things that the president recognizes is that energy production is vital, as well as Senator McCormick, who's spoken on this issue. So in that way, it's been aligned to what we're trying to do here.
Any thoughts on tariffs and what you're hearing from people in your district? Businesses?
I think what people want to see from all of the conversation about tariffs is making more product in America. We need to spur our manufacturing here in this country. That will absolutely help in Pennsylvania, and however that comes about is what our constituents want to see, because you ask what they want to see, they want to see more jobs, and they want to specifically see more jobs in Pennsylvania so our kids are not leaving and going to other states to make their living. All right. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.